What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and last Wednesday a few content creators, myself included, got sent some early boxes of Blazing Vortex, and this was very exciting because this set has 19 world premiere cards and only one OCG import, so we really wanted to see those new world premieres. Now, we knew a few of the world premieres. Obviously I got to reveal two of them, Psychic Eraser Laser and Underdog, which was really cool, and Sam got to reveal a bunch of them as well, including all of the War Rock cards, but we still didn't know about half of them. So these openings are really exciting for people because we wanted to see the new world premieres. I'm pretty sure we now know all of them. I think they were all revealed throughout these pack opening videos, and in today's discussion I want to talk about some of the bigger highlights. I especially like this new fusion monster and the new Polymerization. The new Polymerization is cool because it's a new generic way to fusion summon. We of course see tons of ways to fusion summon for archetypes, but these days generic fusion summoning support isn't always around, so it's pretty cool to see a new Polymerization retrain. We're also going to briefly talk about the War Rocks, because of course we are, but there are other cards we're going to discuss as well. Oh, and just in case you guys missed it, yesterday I uploaded a video on Bakura and his cards that he used in the anime that saw play in the TCG. It is a series I've been doing on my channel for a little while now, so if you guys didn't watch that video, make sure to go check that out after watching today's discussion. Anyway, the first card here is Dealmon Cordius, I think that's how it's pronounced. This is a level 9 Dark Fiend fusion monster with 3000 attack and defense. The summoning requirements are what a lot of people are focusing on with this card, but the effect is pretty interesting as well. So this thing takes one Synchro, one Xyz monster, and one Link monster to bring out. Realistically, you probably will not try to summon this card using your own monsters. I mean, certainly you could summon a Synchro, Xyz, and Link monster pretty easily in a lot of combo decks, but you probably wouldn't want to consolidate them all into this card. Where this thing will be really exciting though is that you can summon this card using Super Polymerization, and let me tell you, there have been plenty of different decks that have been able to summon a Synchro, Xyz, and Link monster on turn 1 that Super Poly now is very good against. This thing says once while this fusion summoned card is on the field, you can pay life points in multiples of 2000 and apply one of these effects for every 2000 life points paid. You can only apply each effect once. So basically you can pay 2000 to do one effect, 4000 to do two different effects, or 6000 to do all three effects one time. You cannot double up on the effects, so please note that. So you can add one spell / trap from your graveyard to your hand. You can destroy 3 cards your opponent controls, not just monsters, cards. Or this turn, this card gains attack equal to half the difference between your life points and your opponent's, and also your other monsters cannot attack. You can only activate the effect of this card once per turn. It is a hard once per turn. So these effects are pretty powerful. Adding back a spell or trap is pretty strong, especially if you can add back Super Poly and potentially use it again for another fusion monster. Destroying 3 cards your opponent controls is crazy strong. And finally, yeah, the attack boosting effect is pretty relevant here because you might be paying 6000 life points, which would put you to 2000, and your opponent probably has 8000. That is a lot of attack points on this one card. I think this card is a lot better than people are giving it credit for. I have played in plenty of formats where decks were able to put up all 3 of those types of monsters on turn 1. I think this thing is a huge sleeper pick of the set. I think a lot of people are not talking about it enough. These effects are all very powerful, and while the card itself has no protection, which kind of sucks, you are probably removing 3 interruptions when you use that Super Poly on these cards. That means that often your opponent isn't going to have an interruption left to try to stop this card's effects. That is very appealing for going second strategies, and if you are someone that is playing Super Poly and you have at least one extra deck spot open, I would definitely consider playing this card. So we got that new fusion, which is cool, but we also got this new way to fusion summon a new Polymerization card that is just generically useful for a lot of fusion decks. And while you could technically summon that first card with this card, I would not recommend it, but I suppose you could. Greater Polymerization is a normal spell that says fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using 3 or more monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, and if you do, it gains these effects. This card cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. So like I said, a lot of people looked at this card, especially right next to that fusion we just looked at, and they said, oh yeah, I guess you can use this to summon that, and then it can't be destroyed by card effects. That's kind of cool. I don't think these cards will be used in the same deck, so I would rather see Greater Polymerization in a deck like Fluffles perhaps. They want Polymerization cards, obviously, that's like their main starter cards, or perhaps Prank Kids are a good deck to play Greater Polymerization as well. Honestly, I don't know every single fusion deck in existence, so I don't know all of the decks that Greater Polymerization could fit into, but those are two that I saw a lot of people talking about. Worth noting here is that you can search Greater Polymerization with Predaplant Darling Cobra, so you could potentially splash like one copy of this card in a fusion summoning deck that is playing the Predaplants, so that way you maybe don't brick on multiple copies of Greater Poly, because admittedly it can be kind of bricky because you have to use at least 3 monsters to use Greater Polymerization, which means if your hand is like 3 Greater Polymerizations, it's going to be a rough time. You guys have probably already seen this card if you watched my box opening, because I pulled one. It's just a common, but I do want to talk about Steel Star Regulator for a second, because I think this card is really cool, especially as a common. I think a lot of players can find decks to put this card into. So this is a Link 3 light machine with 1000 attack, and its materials are 3 non-link monsters. Not super difficult, but yeah, you obviously can't like blow up a card with Nightmare Phoenix and then summon one more monster and make this card. You have to use 3 non-link monsters. So it gains attack equal to the combined original levels / ranks of all monsters used for its link summon times 100. That actually gets it up to pretty high attack points fairly quickly. It already starts out at that 1000, so that's pretty good. You can target one non-link monster your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to this card, destroy it, then if this card was link summoned using an Xyz monster as material, inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the destroyed monster's original attack. You can only use this effect of Steel Star Regulator once per turn. If you are playing Xyz monsters, even like a couple of them, and you have extenders to put monsters on the board, I think one copy of Steel Star Regulator could be very powerful. This card especially seems good for cheesing wins in time. Maybe your opponent took a long turn 1, hoping you wouldn't have enough time to go into your battle phase on your turn 1. Then you could just make Steel Star Regulator and hopefully close out the game. I know that sounds like a very small situation that doesn't come up that often, but I think having a 1-of in your extra deck to pretty much guarantee that you'll win in time if you go second is always going to be a good thing. Oftentimes when the clock is ticking down at tournaments, although we don't have a lot of in-person tournaments right now, I know remote duels obviously still do use timers, you get into a situation where you can combo off on your turn, but you might not have enough time to also go into the battle phase. That's where this card might come in handy. Besides that though, it's sort of just like a Gaga Cowboy even in other situations not related to time, because it can do quite a lot of damage, which could be pretty valuable. I like this card a lot. I think that people are really not talking about it at all. Maybe that's because it's a common, I don't really know, but this is actually one of my favorite new cards in the set. Finally, we have the War Rocks. I know I'm not covering every single World Premiere card, but I have to mention these at least a little bit here. These kind of flopped immediately. A lot of people were very pumped for the War Rock archetype, even just by the name of it. If you remember, the name got leaked. It's not really a leak because it was official, but when we got the Lightning Overdrive product description, it mentioned more War Rock cards, so people were like, oh man, this is going to be like a new rock archetype. We just had Adamancipators, now we can have a new one that's hopefully more balanced but still good. People do love rock monsters. We don't have a lot of rock archetypes. And then when the artwork was revealed, people were like, okay, probably not rock monsters, but maybe they're beast warriors. No, it's just another earth warrior archetype. I think these cards have a tiny bit of potential. I think Warrock Mountain and what's the other one here? Warrock Gaktos are pretty good extenders in some warrior decks. I know people were talking about Gokis, for example, playing these two cards, but the rest of the cards are pretty slow and pretty awkward to use. I will mention here that we will probably be getting a bunch more of these in Lightning Overdrive. At this point, I think we only know that there are more Warrocks, not how many there are, but it would be pretty cool if we got like 7 more of these cards, because I suppose if those cards were really broken, then these ones could be a lot better. I mean, that's just how it works, right? Even if you don't have the best foundation, if you throw enough insane cards at an archetype, suddenly it's viable, which is always really exciting. This is in stark contrast, by the way, to Phantom Rage, when we had all of the mutant cards in that one set. There were 14 of them. So this is kind of maybe Konami seeing how the player base reacts. Do players prefer having all 14 cards of a new world premiere archetype in one set, taking up most of the world premiere spots in that pack, or is it more fun to have the archetype broken up into 2 sets, which leaves a lot more room for other world premieres? One of the reasons this set was able to have so many diverse world premiere cards, some of them that I've already talked about on the channel, some of them we're not going to mention today, is because they didn't have 14 Warrocks in this pack. Overall, I think that Warrocks were pretty disappointing. I think most people are getting that vibe from these cards, but maybe in the future they could have potential. It is a world premiere archetype, and those sometimes can get some pretty crazy support, and we got a couple good cards already, even if the majority of them aren't anything to write home about. But what if we got like an e-telly for 2 of these Warrock monsters with different names? That would be pretty good, right? Because right now the problem is that they're way too slow and normal summon reliant. What about a double summon card? There's all sorts of stuff that they could do with this archetype. Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I didn't talk about all of the new world premieres, but I think these are the big highlights. And obviously last week, 1 week ago actually on Monday, I got to premiere Underdog and Psychic Eraser Laser. Otherwise I would have talked about them in today's video, but if you guys want to hear my thoughts on those cards, I'll make sure to link that at the end of today's discussion. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.